3 years ago, we're a minute and a half away from winning an MASL championship. The next 2 seasons, we've been knocked out in the first round of the playoffs. Well, that's not what the fans of Kansas City deserve, right? What our roster looked like last year, I think this upcoming season, our roster will look very different than what it looked like last year.
Hello everyone, I'm Erik Bergrud, color commentator with the Kansas City Comets, and thank you for joining us for this special conversation with Comets managing partner Brian Budzinski. Today, we'll discuss the state of the organization, the future of the Major Arena Soccer League, off-season roster developments, the club's summer activities, and what Comets fans can look forward to as preparations continue for next season. Bud, thanks for taking the time for joining us today.
Erik, it's always a pleasure to be with you. Appreciate you taking the time to do this for us as well.
Anytime I can go to the world-famous Kansas City Soccer Dome, it's a gift to me. So, let's look back to last season. Now that there's been some time to reflect, what stands out most to you about the 2025-26 season?
What stands out the most? Well, one, I'm very proud of, what the players did off the field in the community. I was very, very proud of how our front office, worked with the community and the fan base. Leading the league again in attendance is something that we pride ourselves on. It's very important. I feel, again, as we had an unbelievable broadcast, quality for the game in general. Off the field, or on the field, I should say, inconsistency would be the word that I would describe, the on-field, performance this past year.
What did this season reveal about the direction and culture of the Comets organization?
Yeah, that's a good question, Eric. It's a deep one too. I think one, we had situations from Nacho unretiring to retire, or being retired, unretiring. We had players, like a lot of fans don't even know this, but Rian Marquez, he goes and he does an unbelievable job. He wins the MVP this past season. Well, Rian is having major back surgery pretty soon, as this interview will hit. He battled the whole season with that. Coaching staff had to manage that. The trainers had to manage that. Rian had to manage that. And that's another thing that I'm proud of is those types of players that kind of work through that type of stuff and wanted to be a part of things, and represent the club the right way. And so, yeah, it was a every season's interesting, right? It's got ups and downs and flows and all that. But this past season presented its own different challenges than what we'd faced previously.
So you talked about Rian getting the MVP. You talked about the Comets leading the attendance for yet another season. Are there any moments or developments during the year that you believe helped define this team?
Ooh. I think we had 5-6 guys that had all league awards. We probably had another couple guys that deserved it. And so I'm proud of that, aspect as well. It's a tough balance. You can sit there and say, some of the guys had good years, but then the results don't say it. So they had good individual, but the team wasn't there.
So the season ends in April, and then early May, league meetings in Baltimore.
Yeah.
So it brought together leadership from across the league. What were your biggest takeaways from those conversations?
I've been a part of the league this is our 17th year, right? And this owners meeting this past time was one of the best ones that we've ever had. It was very enjoyable to have the Sacramento expansion ownership group present with Josh and Charlie. It was nice to have Jim and Rob Brooks with Lehigh Valley as well present. Also, there's some new ownership that's coming in with the Harrisburg Heat, so they were at the owners meeting as well. And so it was very nice to work together with all of the office of the commissioners, right, the whole staff, our front office as well, and then everybody within the league on how we grow this league, moving forward with a bunch of initiatives. And so this past meeting in Baltimore, on top of the fantastic Italian food that we got to eat, was very, very, very well received, and I enjoyed it a lot.
So thinking not only just during the meetings, but in general, how do you feel about the direction and momentum of the MASL right now?
It's fantastic. I mean, you've got, right now we now have 3 ownership groups that own their own arenas, right? You've got Utica City was the first one, then you got the San Diego Sockers, and now you get the Lehigh Valley Spirits, right? You'll have a 4th one coming in Sacramento. And so that's very different. Okay, that just by itself, just from a real estate perspective, is a very different type of situation. But then you also have people that are all like-minded, wanting to grow this game, very purposefully, and everybody's kind of going in the same direction, which we haven't had in the past, and that's also, that's very refreshing and also very exciting.
So let's talk about Lehigh Valley,
Yeah.
right? So expansion continues to be an important storyline for the league. What are your thoughts on the addition of Lehigh Valley?
Well, first off, great ownership group, period, end of story, right? It starts and stops with that. And anybody can say what they want to say about a market or a brand or all that, but it starts and stops with a fantastic ownership group. That group, went in and, in my opinion, hired one of the best individuals I've been around in the league, for a long time, Giuliano Oliviero, right, to lead the soccer side of things. And so these guys are doing it right off the bat. The other part for us as a league, it was very important to provide Lehigh Valley with a starting point, okay? Not say, you're on your own, thanks for joining, okay? What's the actual process as you become an expansion franchise into this league? How can we help you be good on the field right off the bat? So the Office of the Commissioners, they provided, I want to say it was 10 or 11 coaching recommendations for them, right? So here's your contact info. And then we also created this process of a protected list and unprotected list so that they can go and draft players and have a process of the on-field side. And then now they're able to take this model that the league has provided for them, and we can show this. So this is the same model that'll work for Sacramento when they come in. They will be, rewarded 9-10 players in an expansion draft, for them to start out. And anybody that comes in moving forward, this is what the process will be.
So, Bud, it's been a long time since Kansas City indoor soccer fans have experienced an expansion draft.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously not the first time, but that included in Lehigh Valley's draft picks the selection of Comets midfielder David Stankovic. What has David meant to this organization in the short amount of time that he's been here?
It's a good question, too. Well, one, social media will tell you what David means to the fans in Kansas City, right? Just social media. I want, David was here for 7 months. That's it. And if you look at on the MASL's page on social media, the player that has the most comments, the player that will be missed the most apparently, is David Stankovic. No matter what, we were going to lose a quality player, right? And that's just the reality of what an expansion draft.
How challenging is it to navigate expansion while continuing to build and maintain a championship caliber roster?
We talked about that a lot. I mean, you've got this runway that's very short. So we as a league allowed the Lehigh Valley Spirits to basically have a 2.5-week head start, speaking to all free agents of all teams across the league. And so there's that strategy that's involved with it. There's the strategy of, June 1st, the draft's happening on May 26th. Free agency hits June 1st. This window's super short here. It has changed a whole lot of things. We all were trying to navigate what the strategy is. And that's good. It makes things different. It's got fans talking about things. It's got players thinking about where they fit in as well. It was really, really good and really well done, I think.
So as part of the draft, Lehigh Valley picked one player from each of the 8 existing teams. Which teams got maybe the best end versus the worst end of that draft?
Well, the winner of the draft, besides Lehigh Valley Spirits, in my opinion, was the Milwaukee Wave. So, Willie B had already opted out of his contract. So he was already a free agent. And they take, Willie B as the second pick in the expansion draft. So I think Coach Giuliano Oliviero, his ties and his loyalty to the Wave, still kind of held to today because he took care of the franchise. Now I would say, probably the Comets were probably, somewhat of a loser, if you will. Losing a young player like David, who's under contract for 2 more seasons. But I think the Wave did as well as they could. I also think the Sockers did as well as they could because they had just brought in Nilton just for that season. And so, Nilton wasn't going back to San Diego. So they didn't. So the San Diego Sockers and the Milwaukee Wave, the 2 teams that were in the championship last season, didn't lose anybody. Everybody else lost a player that was going to probably be on the roster the next season. So those are my opinion, those are your 2 winners of the draft. And then you can look at the Comets are the ones that kind of got hurt the most.
As attention turns towards this 26-27 season, what are the organization's priorities in building the roster?
Well, I will say this, and I like to be transparent about, where we're at and things. What our roster looked like last year, I think this upcoming season, our roster will look very different than what it looked like last year. And as 3 years ago, we're a minute and a half away from winning an MASL championship. And then the previous the next 2 seasons, we've been knocked out in the first round of the playoffs. Well, that's not what the fans of Kansas City deserve, right? That's not what this community deserves. And so we have to take a hard look at the roster, right? We have a bunch of unbelievable players. We have a bunch of unbelievable, players that are in the community. We have a bunch of great locker room guys. But, the end of the day, the results, and that's what this business is. It's a results business. People in Kansas City want to win, right? We want to win as an organization. So, I can sit here and tell you, on May, the end of May, that our roster come, preseason November 1st, late October, will be very different than what it was the previous, season. Now, might have some fans that'll be upset about it. Hopefully come, February, March, April, May, they're going to be, happy, about it at that point. And that's what the goal will be.
Beyond talent, what qualities do you look for in players representing the Comets organization?
For one, we want guys that are good human beings, right? We want guys that work hard, right? We want guys that in Kansas City, you have to be out in the community. Like that's just a requirement to play for the Kansas City Comets. I think everybody tries to do well. I think we're one of the best in the league, if not the best. And I'm very prideful of that. So it's being a good human, being a good player, right? And so, those 2 things, but really it's a work ethic type of thing. I know Coach Stefan is a blue collar type of coach. He wants guys to work hard. And so, there's all these things you put in. And then also like who's going to fit with who, right? If you're pairing guys running 2s or you got guys running 3s, do they want to run in 3s? Will they not? There's a lot of that stuff that goes into these types of evaluations on guys.
What can fans expect next season in terms of the schedule and overall league structure?
Well, schedule-wise, we'll kick off Black Friday just like we always do. It'll be, Kansas City, St. Louis will be that first weekend. I'm 95% sure about that statement right there. So that's now. I will say this: the league is deciding about starting the season a week earlier or running the regular season 1 week later. Okay. I will tell you, Kansas City wants very much so the league to start a week earlier. I believe the Baltimore Blast want the league to start a week earlier so that they have less issues when it comes to playoff time and home scheduling. And so that's one of the big things that's why, Commissioner Tozer gets paid the big bucks. So is the season going to start, November, basically the week before Thanksgiving, right? Or is it going to go, a week into to April for the postseason as opposed to ending into end of March? So that's a scheduling thing. The other part is there is, and the fans will love this, but there's a little bit of a battle that the commissioner's office has to figure out. This last year where everybody played everybody was very popular for the fans. I think you also saw the most competitive season that you'd ever seen. I believe 20, I think it was 20%, or maybe I might be off on that. 20% of the games went into overtime across the league. Okay. I think the number was even higher that were 1-goal games, right? Okay, and so how do you balance that? Because last year was the most competitive season, top to bottom, that the league has ever seen other than the COVID season, which you and Nick spoke about quite a lot on the broadcast. And then, having these pods of having 5-6 games against the same opponents, right? That's a balancing act. And so those are the decisions the league's got to make. When we were in Baltimore, that was brought up quite a bit.
Do you anticipate additional growth in the number of teams competing in the MASL next season?
I think all that we are waiting on is the Harrisburg Heat. Okay, they're working on their arena, and it's not my place in this format to speak about whether it's the arena that they won the M2 championship in or another arena that's in Hershey. It's not my place to speak. Okay, but I do know that what we've done that we haven't done in the past as a league is we've said, let's wait, or let's be cautious. Let's do this the right way. So Oklahoma City had put in an application for this year. What we said to Oklahoma City is, you're not quite ready for M1 this upcoming year. Let's try to have everything ready for you to be to play in 27-28. Okay, the same thing with Dallas. The same point says, you're not ready for 26-27. Let's help you, okay, to be able to play in 27-28. Where Lehigh Valley Spirits, they got a 26-27 person, office staff, right? They're ready to go. They might be better ready to go than some of the current teams that have been existing for 10, 15 years. And so for the first time in the history of our league, we're saying, let's be cautious. Let's do this the right way. Let's have the operators and the owners be in the best position for them to be successful. And that, for me, Eric, is probably one of the most exciting things that we've done.
So, final question. What message would you like to share with Comets supporters as preparations begin for next year?
Well, one, there's going to be stuff that's going to pique your interest. Some of you are going to like it. Some of you aren't going to like it. But we're gonna compete for a championship this year. I think you hear with a lot of franchises, trust the process. We're not saying that. We're just saying, the deck chairs got to get reshuffled a little bit. We've got to reevaluate the roster because it didn't work, right? The reality is we have data, and the data is the record. So for 25-26 or 24-25 and 25-26, the record was not up to standards. So how do we address that? And we were trying to address that. And so what I would say to fans is, have your opinions February. See what things look like in February, maybe January. President's Day for us as an organization is kind of always your litmus test. Where are we at, come President's Day? And so what I would say to the fans is, let's hold out, reserve judgment, if you will, until, to see where we're at in early February.
So, Bud, thank you again for joining us and sharing your perspective on the future of the Kansas City Comets and the MASL. And thanks to everyone watching. Be sure to follow the Comets on social media for additional updates, off-season coverage, and more conversations like this as we look ahead to another exciting season of Kansas City Comets soccer.